I'm going to go a little bit over some head drawing, some basics of that. I know a lot of people ask that, so I'm going to kind of just do that. And yeah, I'm not going to go live very long, but I am going to talk a little bit about it. So it's a page of noses here. One of the first things I think about when I'm drawing like the head in general is I tend to think entirely in kind of measurements of the head. So for anything kind of like, I don't know, anything in general, I'm thinking about like the circle of the head, right? Let's zoom in a little bit. How do you zoom in? Cool. Thinking about the circle of the head over here. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Circle of the head, let's just say it's facing that direction. I'm thinking of the jaw coming off here. One of the very first things I think about too would be that if you were to think about the front over here, right? Let's just say that's the front of the head, right? Let's just say our head's facing that way. If you're thinking about the front of the head over here, and then you think of the back of the head, right? One of the biggest, most common mistakes ever would probably be that the jaw is somewhere about halfway over here. The jaw will land about halfway. Because people always forget this back of the head right here, this kind of brain case. Let's just say if you have the eye over here, right? People always forget about this brain case. It's like not even funny. I don't understand why people forget it, but people just kind of forget about it. I think it's because we're so used to looking at the front of people's faces that we completely forget that they have a, back of the head there. But so that's right off the bat, something to remember. And you're going to be ahead of a lot of people because I know I've seen a lot of drawings with people turn slightly to the right and then they have just like the face and they have a little bit of hairdo coming off and you're like, where's their head? You know, there's that brain case inside there. So you're going to always need that. Alrighty. Another thing to remember when you're thinking about that. So you remember that the jaw is roughly halfway from the front to the back of the skull. And that's the skull, by the way. Obviously, their hair would add another layer to it. Another thing to kind of remember would be that if you look at the front of the face, you kind of divide it into loose thirds. So, for example, if you got these two right here, you got the brow, and I don't mean like the top of the eye. I mean the actual like brow, like the eyebrow kind of area, like the bump, really, not even where the eyebrow is at, but the bump. And then you have right there where the nose, the bottom of the pit of the nose, and then maybe you have like the chin down here. That'd be one of your thirds, right? So you got like 1/3, another third, and obviously this looks a little bit bigger. It's gonna be rough, right? It's gonna be a rough thirds. And then over here you have the top of the forehead where that starts to turn right there. That's that last third. That top of that forehead starts to turn back in space. And you're kind of like, oh, okay. So that's like a general way to do it. It's to split the front into thirds, pretty much. But that forehead, I guess they talk of the top of the crown or something. You could say the hairline. That's just literally where the head starts turning. If you want to find the ear, you pull this line all the way across, again, like in space, and the ear is going to be a little bit slanted, and then curve right there. It's that little bit of it's a little bit angled back on average. But that kind of stuff is imperative when you remember basic heads, and not everyone falls into this. I get that response a lot. Like, what if I don't fall into this? What if the point is you're just trying to get a generic head down, and then you're kind of adjusting it by by very specific things, basically, right? You just want a generic head down. Otherwise, you're never going to be in the ballpark of anybody's features if you're kind of just winging it every single time. Or like you're going to find cases where the nose is going to be way too long and you're like, what's going on here? What is this? Right? You want that tempered thing, and then you customize it. That's how we did caricatures too, which, to be honest, I could probably go over caricatures at some point as well in the future. But let me move this over here. So I have to draw another head over here. Bam, over here. Let's draw downward a little bit. Something like this. I'm going to have to start drawing a ballpoint pen on these. I feel like this fountain pen isn't serving me right. You know, even though it's a front view, I do the exact same thing. I'm kind of thinking of loosely those thirds over here. And I'm thinking of that little bit of skull hanging out the back there because it's 3/4 view now, right? Say we're supposed to draw. So I'm thinking of I'm finding the brow right here. Then I'm thinking of like, okay, how do I divide the brow into thirds? So let's say here, let's say loose thirds over here and over here. And I can adjust them like, okay, maybe about here, Draw that line across, about here. Go over here, same thing, draw that line across, maybe a little bit higher there. And then I'm thinking of, okay, where are the eyes located? So I usually draw this like sunglasses shape for the eyes. You can kind of draw anything you want for the eyes, but that sunglasses shape is pretty good for the hollowed out, they call it orbicularis oculi. The eye bone. I don't know what's wrong with my memory right now, but the eye socket, right? That's kind of like a loose kind of loose way to kind of like shorthand for the eye socket. And from the eye socket over here, I'm thinking of like, okay, where down here I can draw like the edges of where my nose is going to be, kind of like where it's going to be, that zone where my nose is going to be placed. And then I start to think about where that's going to be placed. Maybe you can see a slight underside, depending on what kind of nose it is. If I continue down, let's say the edges of the nose, you're going to hit the edges of the mouth. Sorry, so the edges, again, that's on average. Everybody's mouth is different, but like I'll say the edges of the mouth are roughly, about here. Maybe draw the flat line right there for kind of where the mouth is going to be. Going down a little bit more. Right there, finding where the chin is. Kind of that's going to taper down a bit. Curving over here. Maybe the zygomatic arch. And the zygomatic arch is just the cheekbone for the most part. Literally, it's just a cheekbone. And we're going over here now. So we're like, okay, well, let's draw the line up over here. And again, these are just measurements you have in your mind's eye. These aren't measurements that you're going to put down every single time. These are measurements more like backup. So if I'm like, I'm drawing a head and I'm like, I can't figure this measurement out, I start going back into the original training I had in my head, right? Where I'm like, that ear looks weird. I got to start doing this. So I'll start doing this or start putting down my map. For the most part, my map over here. So like the ear is not going to go above this usually, unless the head is aiming downward. So then, okay, I'm going to find my ear on this side, right? The position of where my ear is going to be. Over here, the top of the head kind of rolls in a little bit. And then that's how you do it, really. That's how you start mapping out a lot of head drawing issues. That you need to you kind of learn this in order to the way you learn this is you learn this in order to again, as like a backup, as a way to build up. Then when you build it up, you can start drawing heads a little bit more loosely, but then you're like, okay, I don't know where that is, like that eye looks like it's floating away, and then you start kind of in your mind or even physically you start putting down lines like that in pencil to kind of remember where things are, and that's going to help you a lot. Another thing with if we're to start out with the eye, let's just go into the features real quick. Let's just go into the eye. So over here, sorry about the shadow, by the way, guys. So the eye is an eyeball. Remember that. I know that's obvious, but it's an actual eyeball in your eye, right? So when you remember that, you also got to remember it's shoved in an eye socket. That's something to recall. So if it's facing, let's just say the eye is facing that way, the head's facing that way. The eye socket it's going to be inside the eye socket right there, Socket it's going to be inside the eye socket right there, It's literally going to be in there. It's not going to be like It's literally going to be in there. It's not going to be like outward, right? Like that Shinigami or whatever from from Death Note. It's going to be way inside. So you're not even going to see the back half, obviously, most of it. And that's going to cover most of the other. Cover most of the other. You're gonna see this over here. You're gonna see. You're gonna see this over here. You're gonna see. Definitely do that. Helps the channel out a lot, or helps the live. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. If they do that, helps the channel out a lot, or helps the live. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So if you go over here, this is covered over here by skin, and then there's skin underneath, right here, right? So very small amount of your eye right here, only like this much of your eye, and the side view is showing. Right there, the white of the eye, and then you have the act here. Only like this much of your eye, and the side view is showing. Right there, the white of the eye, and then you have the actual, iris and all that stuff. And right there, the white of the eye, and then you have the actual, iris and all that stuff. And so is even showing, really. Even when you go there, is even showing, really. Even when you go there, the eyeball, and even when you go there, the eyeball, and that, then like that, the eyeball, and that, then like that. So for example, if then like that, so for example, if a very little eyelash, skin, so generic eye, and then adjust it to people's types if you're trying to get a specific type. And I was going to say, if you look more into the eyeball itself, let's look into the eyeball here. So you have the eyeball itself. If you want, like, how big is the iris? On average, the iris is roughly 3 across. Even that's a little bit too big. It's supposed to be about 3 across over here, ideally. And that's the iris, the colored portion, right? That's across the eyeball on average, right? See how I made it a little bit big? And it's not always exact. That one, depends on a lot. That's the iris. Then the pupil inside is the same thing. The pupil, the dark part of the eye right there, that's also about 3 across the iris right here. So you want to kind of remember that for sure. It definitely helps. I've had it help a lot, especially when you're doing different drawings for clients or different characters. You want to remember those measurements in order to kind of make your characters like even believable. Can you give me your opinion on Watts Atelier School? That's funny. I went to that school. Waters Atelier? Waters? Is it Watts or Waters? Whoville. Your opinion on Waters Atelier School. Is it Waters or Watts? Because if it's Watts, then I went to Watts. That's where I started also. I don't know if you know that, and that's why you're saying that. But I went to Watts Atelier. It's awesome. Watts, sorry. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Watts is amazing. Yeah, Watts is amazing. I know Proco came out of there. I know, I think it was Steve Fishwick that came out. Is it Steve Fishwick? I can't remember the name. There's a lot of people that came out of there. I know Eric Gist, who's a great illustrator. A lot of great illustrators. Lucas, God, Eric was my teacher way back, like 10 years ago. Lucas Graciano. I don't know if he still teaches there or not, but yeah, that's an amazing school. Yeah, of course. Oh my God, that school's perfect. I don't know what it's like now. I know now they've gone very, very high tech. Like they teach online and stuff. But when I was there, they were just doing, real life classes. And hold on, let me go back into the eye over here. I'm about to go more into the eye on this side. Let me scoot over. So let's go into the eyeball again. But yeah, it was amazing over there. I haven't gone in 13 years, so I have no clue. But back then, so like think about the skin wrapping around the eye. That's the way you want to think of it. So this is the eyeball, and let's think about skin wrapping around it, right? It's this like extra layer of skin wrapping around. That's like what the eyelid is, which is wild. It's like this skin opening up. So when you think about it wrapping around that thing, it feels very different than the typical peanut eye. But anyways, I was going to say about Watts, Tellier, it's a school. Yeah, that's where I learned how to draw to begin with, actually. And I know the problem people had back then that I'm sure maybe they fixed by now is that back then it was only life drawing and it was amazing for the figure and it was amazing to get a start on everything. But the problem was it was hard to get industry jobs because industry jobs wanted like concept artists. They wanted like background artists. They wanted like, you need to know how to design things, which back then Watts didn't teach design at all. That was a big deal. That really prevented a lot of people from working. From them producing. But yeah, it's an amazing school overall. I'm sure they've fixed all that stuff by now because they teach online and they have like different kinds of teachers. But a lot of people had to leave to go to Art Center up in LA because Art Center was teaching design, like really hardcore design, and that Art Center was pumping out people in the industry like, oh my gosh, like nothing else. So I mean, Art Center was more for design and all that stuff. And we're specializing in different careers, and Watts was more just life drawing, and but it's an amazing school, and I don't know, the stuff I saw lately, it looks like they've fixed all that stuff, so it looks awesome. Anyways, do they have music program? No, they don't have a music program at Watts that I know about. No, I don't think it's that kind of thing. It's more just like drawing and stuff, and painting and illustration and that sort of thing. I know for Art Center. I don't know if Art Center had music. I don't think it had music. Art Center had like directing and things of that sort, but I don't think it had music. Okay, let's go into the eye real quick. Let's go back into instruction real fast, and I'll let you guys go. You're thinking about, again, the skin wrapping around the eye, as gross as that is, because we're thinking about it in almost an anatomical sense. And then when you draw an eye, almost always, I think I've seen this with literally every kind of eye, is you don't want the whole iris showing. The reason you don't want that is because if you have the whole iris showing, like if you have the whole iris like that, it's gonna look wild, right? If the eyelid's on there and it's like, whoa, you're gonna look surprised at all times, because that's pretty much what surprised is. You want the iris to tuck a little bit or a lot, depending on who you are, right? Depending on type, under the eyelid. See that? You want it tucked right there. Otherwise, like I said, you don't want it to look surprised at all times. You don't want somebody looking surprised nonstop. You want this right here where it looks more natural. Like when you talk to people, there's always a little bit of eyelid hiding the top side of their iris. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen anybody just like, like totally surprised, no matter what eye you have. Anyways, I'm going to leave live. I just came on here for a little bit to show you guys that, but thank you for the questions, and I'll try to be on tomorrow. Try to come on every day if I can, but yeah, thanks so much. I'll talk to you guys next time, all right? See you soon.